Hey fellas, Onus here, and welcome back to With a Y, and the Undertale Deltarune community has been on fire these last few weeks. Apologies for the lack of Deltarune Undertale videos these last few weeks. I've been busy with stuff, whether I just wasn't uploading or I was really focused on the digital circus, but I'm trying to get back to at least one of these a week because I do want to make sure I keep my ear on the pulse, and I want it to be mostly, inconsequential stuff. We've got a bit more of a to-do list today. A few weeks ago, the Undertale Determination Symphony Tour got announced. And it was called a world tour, where most of the dates were in America, a few in Australia, in Canada, Europe. The UK got the same amount as the rest of Europe, and then there's a few in Asia. Surprisingly, despite the majority of Undertale concerts, to my knowledge, happening in Japan before this tour got announced, there were no official dates on this tour. They might be happening independently of this tour over there already, I'm not sure. And naturally, I was hyped for this because I've always wanted to see the concert in person. I remember seeing some of the videos of the Undertale Anniversary Symphonies and thinking they were just really cool and were probably really electric in the room if you were there. But there's a pretty long running thing that people say when world tours quote unquote get announced, and it's this meme where it's world tour means America and Canada, maybe a few cities in Europe, Africa can just fucking kiss their chances goodbye, Australia will get it 10 years after the fact, Japan will probably get one, Eastern Europe and mainland Asia are a fucking no-shot zone, Southeast Asia will get some, and then there's a very small chance Latin America will get some. And this is a pattern people have noticed across musical acts. We're talking everything from huge pop artists to smaller groups. This is just a noticeable thing that seems to happen all the time. And a lot of that has to do with the logistics of touring, from my understanding. I know a few European-based artists who are English speaking have to go through a lot of hoops to even be allowed to do a multi-stop US tour at smaller venues. And oftentimes they were able to make it happen, but that was a lot of trouble, and Latin America was damn near out of the question because of just the difficulties with making that happen. Doesn't change that it sucks to be a fan of that artist from that area and just not ever get to see them in concert unless you want to go abroad, which there can be as many logistic issues in the world and it'll suck no less to be a fan of something and never get to experience it because of where you happen to live. It's a frustration that makes complete sense to me. Now, from what I understand, the Undertale Determination Symphony was officially licensed but was not being run by Toby Fox. He has no direct say in where they're going. But understandably, a lot of the conversation around the tour was why they weren't going to so many places that have a notably large group of Undertale and Deltarune fans there. The Determination Symphony continued to add more shows, but a lot of it was doubling up on dates that had already sold out in existing tour locations like Singapore or major cities in the United States, double tapping it if they expect capacity to be met on the already put their tours, as well as a few new locations and states that weren't getting any performances originally. Again, most of the new locations were in the United States. And there was a lot of conversation online about how Latin America was just kind of getting the short end of the stick. And less talked about, but Africa just got fucking nothing per usual. And honestly, unfortunately, the odds are it will be like that for some time. It happened a bunch across of different tweets to the point where the official Undertale Symphony Twitter account decided to actively address it. In replies, people were specifically requesting locations for them to come to, in Mexico, where the symphony said they'd love to go there, and they had been there recently for the first time for a different tour they were running. And if you take them at their word, they had looked into going to Latin America already, and that if it didn't happen this year, they would try in the future. Now, and this is a thing I've heard from musician friends of mine where it's if the existing shows on a tour do well, it makes it more likely that if they are able to run it back, they can expand it to more locations in the future. If US shows generate more money to visit other markets, they can expand the tour. More sold out shows make it a proven entity as a moneymaker, therefore there's a higher likelihood that they can take it to places that were underserved in the previous run. In a move I don't think a lot of people were expecting, Sebastian Wolf, who is controversial in the online Undertale fandom in particular, dropped a Undertale Symphony specific newsletter where he encouraged people to sign up and say where they were located so they could get actual numbers to gauge interest. You have a country listed here, and then honestly in a kind of comedic fashion, USA gets a specific state option. Jesus Christ, man, we are spoiled fat fucks over here. And then specific region, Africa, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and then Europe, Latin America, North America, and the Middle East. And I gotta say, I do find the frustration from people who have literally no tour dates in their area to be understandable, because I remember like when I saw the anniversary concerts happening for the first time, they were only in Japan, and like I would really have liked to go to one of those, but that's really far away and would be really expensive to go to. And they did like, I believe, one in London for the 10th anniversary that I completely missed, but would have absolutely gone to if I knew about it in advance enough. And I was like, God damn it, I missed them. I guess I'll wait 5 years for the next anniversary and make sure I go abroad for that one. So I was happy to see that they were actually like doing an officially licensed symphony tour well before I thought I would get the chance to actually see it in person for real. So like the frustration and the disappointment makes complete sense to me, and it seems like they've talked about it more and how they would like to make it happen there. But in what seemed to be like a perfect storm of events, like a kind of adjacent topic popped up on the timeline pretty consistently. It's not a discussion that I think is new. It's certainly something I've wondered about before, but it was the fact that Undertale and Deltarune have only been officially released in 2 languages, English and Japanese. Notably, these are the languages that Toby Fox is fluent in, and I saw a lot of discourse about this and people expressing disappointment that for as long as a game like at least Undertale has been out, like there is no like official, say, Spanish translation or Brazilian Portuguese translation for the game. This discussion could range from understandable frustration to being like underserved despite being like a longtime fan of the game and meeting a lot of people who are also in Latin America not getting an official translation so they could like discuss it with people in their lives who maybe only speak Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese, or being able to experience an official version of the game without needing to learn English or Japanese first. It led to like some admittedly funny memes that were, although exaggerating what the discussion was, still like came off lighthearted to me, where you have Latin America scrawny and starving under the fat belly of Toby Fox, him looking in the telescope, unable to see over his engorged belly. Where is Latin America? In the audience seeing 2 cakes. Why aren't these cakes translated to Brazilian Portuguese? Like, they were funny bits that like kind of encapsulated in a joking form some of the understandable frustration that people were feeling. And I have a feeling, though no scientific evidence, that I think it was the discussion around the concerts and this being a kind of underlying concern that people have had for a while now that led into it ballooning into the bigger discussion that it became. And keeping it a buck, some of the way that people on admittedly both sides were talking about this got like kind of vitriolic. They were throwing some pretty harsh language at Toby and at each other that I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care to get into, because I think the discussion in a vacuum at its core has a lot of nuance that is worth discussing. And bottom line, no one should be getting harassed over this. And it got to a point where Toby Fox on Blue Sky decided to address what was being said directly and gave some insight as to the process of translating it that I think could be reasonably assumed, but was nice to have clarification on. Like, in the middle of all this, Toby was also doing a promotion tweet for Off, a game he worked on the soundtrack for the remake of, finally getting its Japanese version released, and it's like what a fucking coincidence that it came out around the time all this shit was happening, man. But on Toby's official response, I'm gonna be condensing this a little bit because it's 2 pages long, and he goes through like 3 core pillars of concern people had. That being the concerts, the translation issue, and the pricing of fangamer merch of Undertale and otherwise being really expensive for Latin America specifically. Recently, Fangamer asked me to make a post in Japanese regarding the translation of Off. In the responses, I noticed some frustration from Latin American fans. To show you what that looked like, it was it goes for a fucking minute, dude. Let me address a few of those issues now. There is an officially licensed Undertale concert series that unfortunately has no shows planned in Latin America. I did retweet its schedule on request, but I have hardly any involvement with the concert series and no input on where they perform. But the organizers have heard the enthusiasm from Latin America, and I personally think it would be great to have performances there. I hope it works out. Me too. Fangamer's shipping costs to Latin America are prohibitively expensive. As just one of Fangamer's clients, I'm aware of this and have asked them about possible solutions before. I think it'd be amazing if they could find affordable shipping to Latin America and other affected regions, but they have expressed that it's a huge logistical hurdle. The other shipping methods they've tried had a lost package rate of over 50%, which is insane. From my understanding, like shipping merch from all sorts of franchises, from indie ones like Undertale to even stuff like Pokemon, where you're like getting the bigger items like plushies over there. Like, there's a lot of logistical issues with that, which fucking sucks for everybody over there, man. Like, I can't help but feel for them. Still, I think Fangamer is interested in finding solutions, so I hope that we can figure out some way to get affordable merch to Latin American fans. Fangamer is easy to work with and passionate about the things they make. I trust them and would prefer to collaborate exclusively with them on merch. As someone who's done in a much smaller capacity than Toby Fox merch runs, finding like a good partner like that who is reliable and like provides quality product, what you're trying to like give to the people who are willing to spend money on the things that you're making, it's very hard to find that. I understand that from Toby's perspective. Maintaining a high bar of quality is difficult. And this is like, I think, the major issue that has like sparked the most discourse over the last few days. Unfortunately, there are no translations for Undertale into other languages besides Japanese. That includes Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, but also every other language: Chinese, Korean, Russian, French, German, Italian, and more. And this is why I found the Latin American community's frustration so understandable, because it's probably something that Undertale fans worldwide, as this is like an internationally beloved game at this point, are probably feeling in relatable ways. I know it sucks that there are no other official translations for Undertale, but I want to make it clear that this isn't because I have a grudge against other countries. It's because if I release something official, I want it to match my vision. I was only able to do this for the Japanese version because I know Japanese myself, and I worked very closely with our brilliant translator to thoroughly check the text. I am not against official translations for other languages if we could make it work the same way. In the past, I have looked into various options with my publisher 8.4, but nothing has come of that yet. Maybe I should try a different approach. I think that's a very important line in this response to everything that's been going on, because I respect Toby's commitment to the Japanese version of the game, but even still, that took like 2 years after the initial launch of Undertale to come out, and it was him doing a lot of oversight and like giving direct feedback on the decisions that were being made in the translation of that game. But that method is just not feasible if he wants to translate it for the Latin American audience, but also all the other gigantic pockets of community we see active in the fandom, like Chinese, Korean, and Russian. Guys who go into similar psychosis by saying some sort of theory that Susie's gonna blow up hometown with a nuke by the end of chapter 7. Toby goes on to say, I'm very happy that there are unofficial translations on PC. Considering I don't understand other languages, letting fans interpret the game without the burden of being quote-unquote officially perfect is amazingly helpful. As for Deltarune, it's just not feasible from a development standpoint to support other languages right now, since it would make the game take longer to come out, which, as we all know, is already feels like a gigantic wait as it is. I'm honored to have many fans across the world, and of course that means Latin America too. I don't want anyone to feel left out. I'm sorry if my silence made me seem like I was ignoring anyone. In my opinion, this was a pretty solid response to understandable frustrations that underserved parts of the community feel. It's nice to hear that he has looked in the past for ways to translate the game, and I think this went over mostly well. I'm not gonna lie, it did extend the discourse an extra day, and I think a lot of people are just kind of exhausted by it because there's a lot of nuance. You had people pointing out the Legends of Localization book that's 271 pages of content on the individual decisions that went to getting the dialogue to come across in Japanese in a similar way as it did in Linglish. You had some people who worked on localization in the past giving their thoughts, kind of giving a write-up on their own thoughts on the situation, and if you want to read the full thing, I'm going to leave the 2 pages from Felix F. here on screen. Here's the first one, and here's the second one. I'm just going to hold here for a minute so you can pause and read it if you so desire. It went from this fan artist doing this funny vent art where it was just Toby Fox choking the daylights out of Brazil, and it turned into a hug. And I'm left with the overall takeaway that translations for Deltarune simultaneously releasing as the new chapters do, it's off the table. Like, it's unfeasible with the already long development cycles that we're going through for individual chapters, where the Japanese translation and method for it that Toby is using currently already add time to the development, which I think we can all universally relate to chomping at the bit for. I want to say that as much as I understand the frustrations of people who would like the game to be available officially in their native tongue, this is at the end of the day Toby Fox's art and ultimately his time and resources that he would have to commit to these different things. And that could come at the cost of like resources given to finishing Deltarune, or even after Deltarune's done, if he wants to work on a new project, he would have to commit the time to it. And him taking the time to learn Spanish and then go through with a fine-tooth comb like he did with the Japanese translation probably isn't feasible. Like, he can't get fluent, and not just in like languages in Latin America, but all the other gigantic pockets of fandom that we see and also don't have official translation. I think the maybe I should try a different approach thing is like the way forward if that is an ambition he has, which, as much as it might suck, I think is ultimately up to him as the creator of the game. Like, it's easy to say, like, just outsource the localization to professionals who have done this for ages, which is true on some sense. Like, that's a very common practice for most games. And I, as an English speaker, am incredibly fucking lucky in this regard, because while it doesn't happen every time, it happens a lot of the time where there's a huge incentive for foreign-made games to be translated into English for me to consume and enjoy. But with that said, there have been like botched instances of that in the past. The Chinese Silksong translation at launch comes to mind. It's a risk and a resource commitment for what is at the end of the day a indie development outfit. And I think if Toby has ambitions of getting it translated into other languages, not one or two, but like a bunch, Undertale is probably the place to do that. It's been out for 10 years. It's a smaller game than Deltarune will end up being, and it might give him more room to figure out what works and what doesn't than trying to apply this retroactively to Deltarune while it's still in active development. Anyways, that's all I got. I've tried my best to like be pretty nuanced about this because I think there are equal parts understandable frustration and understandable reasons why translations haven't happened. And through the noise and the more heated elements of this discussion, I feel like I have learned a decent amount about localization. I went ahead and picked up that book I mentioned earlier because I'm genuinely curious about the process. And if you guys have anything to add, so long as we're keeping it like respectful and level-headed in the comments, I'd love to hear more from your perspective. Anyways, be sure to follow me on Twitter at @withAY. That email is in the description if you guys want to send me any video topics. Anyways, piss off.